Yeah, that's the one I picked up. Okay, then you turn that on. Welcome everyone here today. Pat Gallery, it's good to see. So welcome to the Shire meeting, Tuesday 25th of July. Members of the public are advised that recommendations to Council contained within this agenda can be subject to change. Applicants and other interested parties should refrain from taking any action until written advice is received confirming Council's decision with respect to any particular issue. Any statement or insinuation of approval regarding any planning or development application made during an ordinary Council meeting is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by Council. Council members and the community are reminded that should an exception resolution be passed, this has the effect of making the decision to accept the officer's recommendation stated in the agenda as the Council's decision without change. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. And we pay our respect to all members of the Aboriginal communities and to their cultures and to elders both past, present and emerging. Procedural motion. Councillor Gillett put forth the following: that Council suspend Standing Orders Part 8, Clause 8.5, members to indicate their intention to speak and to rise when speaking, to allow members to remain seated when speaking, to improve the quality of the audio recording of the meeting. For a seconder, Councillor Burgoyne. I'll put the motion. Those for the motion? Yes, yes. Those against? Neil. First time for everything, Councillor Beak. Okay, item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. Councillor Michelle Boylan requested to attend Tuesday 25th of July 2023 Ordinary Council meeting electronically in accordance with Regulations 14C 2 Part B of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996. The Shire President has approved this request and is satisfied that the location from which the member intends to attend the meeting and the equipment that the member intends to use to attend the meeting is suitable for the member to be able to effectively engage in deliberations and communications during the meeting as per Regulation 14C5 and 14D6 of the regulations. Welcome, Councillor Boylan. Can you hear us okay?
I can, thank you.
Nil apologies, and we have Councillor Lovett with a late apology. So we wish her all the best today, tending to family issues. We have a leave of absence from Councillor Bromham and Councillor Caboni. Item 3, applications for leave of absence. Councillor Campbell requests a leave of absence from Wednesday 23rd of August 2023 to Friday 1st of September 2023 inclusive. We have a mover, Councillor Burgoyne, seconder Councillor Crispin. I'll put the motion. Those for the motion? Those against? It's carried. Enjoy your break, Councillor Campbell. Item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. Councillor Capagreco.
Thanks, Mr. President. A couple of quotes here. Words of inspiration, I hope. The first one is from Robin Benincasa. You don't inspire your teammates by showing them how amazing you are. You inspire them by showing them how amazing they are. And the second one is from Mr. John Cole. A boss sees your results and gives you extra work. A leader sees your potential and gives you new opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice is nil. Item 7, public question time. Mr. Jesse Patani. There we go. Look at that. Sorry, Jesse. I'm running ahead. Just missed one out. Item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interest, as listed on the screen. Councillors? Councillor Coleman? All correct. Councillor Dickinson?
Yes, correct, thank you.
Councillor Beach?
All correct.
Councillor Catarego?
All correct, thank you.
Any others, councillors?
I've got one listed. Yeah.
One listen, okay. Councillor Burgon, all good? Yep. Okay. Item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice is nil. Item 7, public question time. Welcome, Jesse. Second time round.
So I've got 2 questions today. My first one is, given that the Shire of Harvey is not responsible for protecting the financial interests of residents, why has the Shire of Harvey initiated an amendment to change the R16 restrictions on lots 100 and 101 Rig Road, Marla?
Through Mr Chairman, I suppose the most relevant reason for why Council is actually resolving to initiate an amendment tonight to remove those restrictions is that it's consistent with the Shire's endorsed local planning strategy, which actually highlights the desire for that to actually be removed. And that document's been supported by both Department of Planning and the Shire. So simply put, the rezoning is actually designed to regularise itself, the restrictions out there with the current planning framework being the local planning strategy.
Yeah, okay. We have, I'll touch on that now in our deputation today as well, so that's fine. I think you might have answered this question then, but when is it anticipated that amendment number 125 will be actioned?
Well, depending on the decision of tonight, if Council resolves to initiate it, the documentation would need to be prepared and then referred through to the Department of Planning, to the EPA for its consent to advertising, and that process through to completion would take probably in the order of about 12 months. The other side of it is we're not too sure when we would actually do that because of the fact that this is a recommendation of which the Department of Planning would need to take into consideration in terms of the amendments to the scheme. So if they might actually say, we will make those changes as part of the draft scheme, so that avoids a need for 125. So we'd probably try and wait for some advice back from them before actually pushing the button on referring anything through the EPA.
Thank you very much.
Penny, Tani. Welcome, Penny.
Good afternoon. Is there currently a method of recording non-compliance of restrictions, such as the R16?
Through Mr Chairman, yes. So every piece of correspondence that comes in relating to non-compliance or any other matter is actually recorded in our centralised record system. So, and it's on a property by property basis. So if we received any concerns or allegations over non-compliance, they would be on the individual property owners' files.
Okay. Similar to the, I think in the planning scheme too, it talks to a non-compliance register. So we were just wondering if there was actually one of those in place at the moment. Has the non-compliance of residents residing permanently within the developments in lots 100 and 101 Rig Road, Mylar, who are subject to an R16 restriction, been documented or addressed to date?
Through Mr Chair, as far as the properties within Kookaburra Way, given that resolution of Council back in 2003, there has been no formal follow-ups with regard to that. It was considered to have been resolved. Those properties around the lake, given that the development approvals associated with the, I'll use the word dwellings, but they've all been approved as short stay accommodations. So from a planning perspective, the development approval that's been granted relates to shallows. There has been, sorry, I'm not sure why, I'm getting feedback on it. There hasn't been any sort of follow-up with regards to the land use tenure in terms of that, but we do on a regular basis follow up with non-compliant structures, so illegal structures through there all the time.
But the method of their residing hasn't been addressed?
It hasn't been on the Shire administration's sort of focus at this stage when it comes to compliance for that particular matter, generally because this item has actually been in train for quite some time to actually try and regularise it, and those discussions have been held with the Department of Planning and also with the Department of Planning and with owners as well, and the Strata Company too.
Thank you.
Mary Noble. Question, Mary? Welcome.
My question is, what sort of sewage system does the Crooked Carrot use? Does anyone know?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So originally back in 2000 there was a smaller effluent disposal system of a standard septic and 2 leach drains that was approved for that size. In 2020 an application was approved by the Department of Health to increase that system to, I can be very technical, but it's an 1100 litre baffled tank with 2 25-metre leach drains.
Right, so not the old-fashioned honeysucker.
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions at all? Okay, item 8, petitions, deputations and presentations. It's Mary Noble, you're up first. Mary, welcome again.
So good afternoon, and thank you for giving me the opportunity and all of us the opportunity to present this deputation. It is of course in relation to LSP 2, proposed amendment to the R16 restrictions of Freshwater Lakes Estate. So what is short stay? The reality is a holiday house that is used for a few weeks of the year by the owners. Nowadays, thanks to Airbnb, holiday houses are money makers. They are usually 4-bedroom houses capable of sleeping a minimum of 8 people. To maximise income, they also come with bunk beds and pull-down sofas, thus accommodating up to 16 people. And from the point of view of the Airbnb guests, the more people they can pack in, the cheaper per head. I speak from my experience of the Airbnbs on the lake. For example, 2 weekends ago, one of the Airbnbs had 7 cars parked outside. This indicates a probable minimum of 14 adults. There were also a number of children with the group. Sadly, this is not uncommon. If this was to be duplicated 60 times, that's the number of approximate blocks around the lake, wastewater systems would break down. The laundry alone would have a terrible impact. The Airbnbs are rented out every weekend. The demand is that high. Long weekends are always full and every house jam-packed. Compare this to a couple living permanently on the lake. Their wastewater is spread evenly over time and is easily coped with by the ATU systems. Because of the location of the lake, away from schools, sports facilities, etc., the area does not appeal to families with children. Nearly all the people with residences are retirees. To protect the lake and surrounding environment, we really need to have the majority of the properties as permanent residencies. Permanent residents have a vested interest in protecting the integrity of the lake and surrounding land. Visitors don't care. With regard to transport, in her petition last month, Ms. Batani paints a highly improbable picture of school buses and 100 cars using Rig Road on a daily basis, and making the Rig Road highway junction extremely dangerous. Given the number of vehicles turning into Rig Road to the Crooked Carrot, even if 100 extra cars a day went through, it would be immaterial. Were all 60 properties to be short stay, it's quite feasible that Fridays and Sundays, when the highway is at its busiest and most dangerous, there could be 400 cars using Rig Road. Quite possible. With regard to the horticultural aspect, being surrounded by horticultural businesses. So Freshwater Estate has state forests on its eastern boundary. All other boundaries are now farms owned by Patani. In other words, there is one neighbour. It has been suggested that the shared wastewater system for 27 properties could have an impact on the neighbouring vegetable field. The area in question borders the field for a total of 100 metres and is at least 20 metres from the vegetables. There is a buffer of mature peppy gums and other native trees and shrubs. The Murdoch University recommended list of plants most efficient at absorbing nutrients has the peppy gum right at the top. Given that a mature tree has a root system of 50 metres, the chance of any wastewater finding its way into the fields is non-existent. Organic farming standards require a buffer zone of only 15 metres. Bear in mind that modern ATU systems clean the water to a very high standard. Ms. Patani has given no credible evidence showing that the freshwater lakes development impacts their agricultural and horticultural business in any way whatsoever. We have no effect on their businesses. Finances. Financially, the Shire of Harvey would benefit far more from permanent residents who shop locally, contribute to the community, and volunteer their time, all us oldies. Housing. The whole of Australia and the Shire of Harvey is no exception. It's in the grip of a housing shortage. Predictions are that it will take years to overcome this crisis. A new housing development takes years to get to the point where building can begin. Freshwater Lakes is ready now, and as soon as the short stay restriction is lifted, people will have the confidence to build their homes here. There can only be positives in removing the short stay provision. Should this fail, what will the council do? Will we have to leave? Will that then mean an additional at least 30 families in the Harvey Shire desperately looking for accommodation? There is none. I sincerely hope that common sense will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Capodrago?
Thanks, Mr. President. Just got a question for Mr. Hall. If a property is zoned as permanent resident, can they still operate a B&B out of that property?
You can apply for short stay holiday accommodation under our current scheme. The minimum lot size, I'm trying to think if it's 800 or 900? 900 square metres. So there are some restrictions in terms of lot sizes that would need to be applied. But yes, you could do so. And the occupancy numbers referred to there would probably be not ones that we would support through the correct approval process. But yes, you could do.
Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, sorry, I have a follow-up question to that then. How many registered Airbnbs are in this estate now? Knowing that some operate, how many are registered?
I'm not sure who they're actually registered to in regard to their marketing and management of the properties. Given, as I said, as the development approval has actually been granted for chalets, they can choose whoever they wish, they can do it themselves. So
not registered with us.
They're not registered with us.
Okay. Next deputation is from Mr. David Ryan. Welcome, David.
Good afternoon, councillors.
Councillor Jackson.
I'll make this one short and sweet for you. So, in 2003, Kookaburra Close had been given permanent residency. Since then, when the first home was built 20 years ago, there's been 25 homes built, just over one home per year, with minimal occupants in each home, which has had virtually zero effect in the land water. Our waste disposal units on Kookaburra Close are all current and up to standard. I bought my home in 2014 and I've been told we had a permanent residency which had been approved by the council and the Shire. In the Kookaburra Close strata we have 4 families with a total of 9 children that would be uprooted if our permanent residency was taken away and it was taken to short stay, which would be pretty ruthless, I reckon, for the children. They're all in schools. I feel this whole agenda is an attempt by the Patani Produce Company to force us out because they've had their other agendas that didn't go their way. This is just another way of trying to get what they want. When the lots surrounding Kookaburra Close and Freshwater Lakes have been sold, families and their homes had already been built and they're already living there permanently with permission around Kookaburra Close, that is, sorry. We've got school buses that service both Harvey and Kingston primary schools from the Crooked Carrot, which is good. The accidents that occur at the Forest Highway and Rig Road have all been Crooked Carrot related, all during the peak times, usually on long weekends and holidays, and also since the massive growth of the Crooked Carrot has occurred. The Shire's been promising permanent residency for over a decade now, and we would like to make it official. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Any questions, councillors? Okay. Jonathan Riley. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, councillors. Good afternoon, councillors. I'll make this deputation this afternoon on behalf of the current and prospective landowners at 38 Stanley Road, Wellesley. Firstly, I'd like to thank the councillors for their support on our submission thus far. As you may be aware, 38 Stanley Road is currently the home of AgSpread Fertilisers, and before long it will also house a refuelling facility adjacent to Forest Highway. I have made a number of deputations to you in recent weeks, and our efforts to secure a more workable set of provisions in TPS2 have been ably assisted by our professional planning consultants, Lateral Planning. All we are seeking out of this process is a level of consistency we are accustomed to seeing in other jurisdictions, and to provide a land use certainty and security rather than simply relying upon non-conforming use rights. To this end, our consultants have prepared an alternate set of TPS provisions that mirror Council's zone objectives and policies, and in addition seek to enshrine the recent development approval supported by Council and bestowed upon the site at JDAP in June 2022, just over a year ago. The only additional use not previously contemplated for number 38 Stanley Road is warehouse and storage use, which is demonstrated by Catalanos at number 35, has secured and established the same approval directly over the road, and thus applied to number 38 will not alter the character or intensity of the precinct beyond that which is already occurring. It is interesting to note that the advertised version of TPS2 that closed for comment on the 6th of April in 2023 included in the proposed use class table additional use A9 for 35 Stanley Road, that's the Catalano site. Additional use A9 of the draft TPS advertised Council's intention to enshrine warehouse and storage use for 35 Stanley Road following a prior DA approval. This advertised version included the storage and warehouse use listed as a D use, meaning of course that subject to an application for DA, additional storage uses may be approved by this council should off-site impacts be manageable. As mentioned above, all we are seeking by way of our amended resolution before you is similar treatment to that encountered by Catalanos, being the modification of the use class table for the site to include DA approved uses, thereby making evolution over time of those uses possible at this council's discretion. The additional warehouse and storage use sought in respect of 38 Stanley Road is an ideal land use to have occurring in a precinct dominated by the adjacent tip, and it has already been proven to work in the precinct by virtue of Catalanos already establishing this activity under a DA granted by this council. I hope this assists your deliberations further this afternoon, and I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Johnson. Any questions, councillors?
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a deputation from Penny, Lauren and Jessie Patani. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name's Penny Patani. I'm an owner and director of Patani Produce, an owner and director of Patani Farms, representing the Patani family, and as one of the owners of 13 farms in the Harvey Shire. My credentials also include being a director on the board of AusVeg, which is the national peak industry body, a chair and committee member of the Mile Up Coast Growers Group. I'm also an industry member of the advisory committee for the Harvey X School. Okay, so good afternoon. We're here today to address the removal of restrictions on lots 100 and 101 Rig Road, Mile Up, more commonly referred to as Kookaburra Close and Freshwater Lakes. We have for some time now been discussing the conflict between the land uses that these subdivisions have triggered. The development of this property has a long history, and after 10 years of applications being referred to multiple government departments, it was approved in 2002 as the Remlap Ranch Resort, which was a tourism development. I've actually got the plan here if anybody hasn't seen that or had access to it. In 2003, the councillors conditionally approved an application to remove the short stay restrictions from Lot 101, Kookaburra Close. The approval was subject to a modified concept plan being submitted to and approved by the council. This has not occurred. There is, to our knowledge, and Shire employees have confirmed this, no record of the modified concept plan being developed, submitted or approved. One would surmise that this plan would have addressed the many issues that placing a residential development within a priority agricultural precinct would create. The plan should also have addressed all of the normal requirements of a residential subdivisions and their interaction with their surrounds. It should also be noted that the requirement was not only for the submission but also the approval of the modified concept plan. In the Shire of Harvey local planning strategy, the removal of the short stay restriction is to address the limited development that had occurred on Lot 100, Freshwater Lakes, but still included the need to provide what is now referred to as a development guide plan in order to address the issues associated with a residential subdivision, and also recommended that both subdivisions retain the tourist special use requirement. The strategy is contradictory and does not propose an appropriate reasoning for the change that outweighs the implications on the surrounding agricultural precinct. It has been mentioned by Shire employees that there was a strata plan. This is an entirely different requirement and deals with tenure. There is still an intrinsic need for the development guide plan. The absence of this plan is a serious issue for all parties. We believe the restrictions in their present format, if they were complied with, could still assist in alleviating the impact that the developments have on agricultural operations in their proximity and the region in general. They would constrain development and therefore reduce its impact. More people on a full-time basis will increase the impact. Agricultural activities be given prime standing. Temporary residents would be more likely to embrace agricultural activities and less likely to oppose them. Effluent system is not suitable for a permanent subdivision of this size. Infrastructure, roads, paths, public space, etc. are more aligned with holiday accommodation and not suitable for a residential estate. With reference to my comment regarding the impact of increased population, there have been comments that the change to a permanent accommodation would not make any difference. We strongly dispute this. A permanent residential subdivision will increase the population. 100% occupancy in short stay accommodation is unrealistic. The Shire has also noted that the development of vacant sites has been limited by the restrictions. Removal of these restrictions will increase development and population and thereby the related impact, inclusive of traffic, both pedestrian and vehicular, public and community spaces. It will also have a huge impact on the effluent system, particularly as it applies to the existing site being adjacent to a food production area. In summary, the current restrictions were implemented on these properties due to the anticipated issues with a development that is so unique and contradictory to the larger environment. Nothing in this space has changed and there is no justifiable reason for the restrictions to be removed.
Good afternoon, I'm Lauren Patani and I'm representing the Patani family as well. It is well known that the area in Mile Up is largely a farming area, more specifically a major horticultural precinct in the state. The Greater Bunbury Region Scheme 2017 defines the Marlup farming area from Buffalo Road to the Northern Shire boundary as priority agriculture zone, including lots 100 and 101 that fall within this area and buffer zone, as well as the current effluent system for both of these lots. We feel as though the removal of the R16 restriction on both the Kookaburra Close and Freshwater Lakes estate are contradictory to the aims of identifying this as a priority agricultural area. The implementation of Amendment 125, removing the R16 short stay restriction, is going to prevent current and future agricultural uses within this priority agricultural zone. If removed, occupancy of these lots is going to increase, meaning more individuals will increase current conflict. It has been demonstrated quite clearly that those currently living in these estates cannot live within an agricultural area without having issues with the practices that are involved in farming. We have had numerous complaints from occupants, many of whom have moved in since we have owned lots 6 and 8. These include dust, noise, smell of the cattle feed, flies that hang around the cattle, licence, culling and removal of kangaroos that have been breeding on our property, using the roads, location of the gates on our properties, and burning practices. These complaints are all associated with general farming activities, not specific to horticulture, and all of which we've been taking well in our rights to conduct. On many occasions, we have been stopped from undertaking these activities because of these complaints. To put it simply, it is clear that the current housing situation at lots 100 and 101 conflicts with the current agricultural practices occurring on 3 sides of the estates. We find this very frustrating as all 3 sides that are currently farming there have been there well before this housing estate existed. I ask the Council to also consider the future agricultural projects in the area that may be affected by the removal of this restriction. The Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development is currently investigating projects that would see the horticultural areas along West Brake Road being developed where it is currently planted in pines once they are harvested. This has also been identified by the Shire of Harvey in the Local Planning Strategy 2020 under 3.4.2. If permanent occupants are complaining now, how are they going to handle potentially being surrounded by, on all 4 sides, by horticulture or even just general farming? The GBRS Priority Agriculture 2017 policy aims to protect these areas in this priority agricultural land by preventing development that may adversely affect their use for agricultural production now and in the future. Removing this restriction completely contradicts the aims of this policy as well as the local planning strategy. The increase in population of this area, if the restriction is removed, is only going to exacerbate the number of complaints and make it more difficult to conduct any farming activities. For those who are staying temporarily, these aren't so much of an issue. They go home after a couple of days. But it is clear to see that people living there have issue with it and it's not compatible. The limited number of occupants currently have already restricted what we're able to do, let alone if they was to be fully occupied. Agriculture in any format was going to be intrinsic to these subdivisions and their surrounds. As has been mentioned previously, there seems to be one rule for farmers and another for everyone else. The Marlup Horticultural Precinct is an area roughly 30 kilometres long, and with projects that will see horticulture and agriculture being further developed to the east, the decision to have a permanent residential housing estate in the middle of this area and expect agricultural businesses to alter their activities is not logical and cannot be justified. I hope the Shire can recognise our frustrations and the implications that allowing this short stay accommodation to be converted to permanent housing will have on the farming area in this region.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Jesse Patani. I'll just start by summarising the points made about this development and the impact that removing these restrictions will have on neighbouring agricultural properties. So this subdivision was approved with the condition that restrictions be put in place to constrain development on this lot due to anticipated conflicts. This approval was also subject to the approval of a development plan that would address unique and the contradictory nature of this development and the concerns the councillors foresaw. This plan was never submitted. Therefore, these subdivisions are not appropriate for permanent living from a planning perspective. The restrictions in place also serve the purpose of constraining development in the area to minimise its impact on local agriculture and horticulture. The residents on lots 100 and 101 have demonstrated that they do not wish to live in proximity to agriculture or horticulture. By removing short stay restrictions, the council will encourage development in this area, cause an increase in population and exacerbating conflict between residents and current and future agricultural endeavours. I think I could confidently say that if the council had their time again, they would not have approved this land for subdivision. It conflicts with state schemes and policies. It does not satisfy the criteria of a safe or adequate residential community and has been the subject of council meetings for over 2 decades. But here we are. Had the Shire employees enforced the restrictions that are currently being ignored, we would not have the conflict in land uses that we have today. These restrictions were put in place for a reason, to constrain the threat that these residential estates pose to local agriculture. And to my knowledge, the circumstances under which these restrictions were put in place have not changed. The only reason the Shire has for removing these restrictions is to protect the financial interests of the occupants. As landowners ourselves, we have had to accept that purchasing lots 6 and 8 was not the best business decision, and we have suffered financially because of this. That's how the world works. I would like to remind the council that financial interests are not a consideration of the council. Previous Shire employees have allowed occupants to ignore the restrictions on their properties. This is wrong. However, it would be unreasonable and callous to ask that the restrictions be enforced now after the Shire has let landowners invest in and live on these properties. To remedy this situation, we propose the following. Firstly, that the restrictions remain on lots 100 and 101. Amendment number 125 is not implemented, and that this is also reflected in the LPS number 2. And secondly, in the long term, the temporary allowances be made to allow for those who have been permanently living on lots 100 and 101 in conflict with the restrictions to live there on a permanent basis. This would be under the condition, however, that this allowance would be revoked on the transfer of ownership. This could be implemented through the non-compliance register in the LPS number 2. This living arrangement would acknowledge the investment made by occupants while also holding them accountable for the financial risk they took in purchasing a restricted property. The situation we find ourselves in is a result of the abdication of responsibility of Shire employees and previous council members. The council now has an opportunity to reconcile the mistakes of their predecessors and finalise this matter. Thank you for hearing our deputation today. We hope that the council sees fit to put forth a motion that, at the very least, suspends the proposed removal of these restrictions. This would allow time for a fair outcome to be negotiated by the council, occupants and agricultural landowners. Thank you.
Any questions, councillors? All good, thank you. Okay, and we have another deputation from Deborah Miller. Welcome, Deborah.
Good afternoon, thank you. I would also like to add my voice to those wanting the short stay restrictive wording removed. I believe the landowners of the agricultural land surrounding Freshwater Lakes purchased that land well after Freshwater Lakes estate was developed in 2006. Most owners were advised by the developer, and many of them were advised by the Shire as well, that the short stay restriction was in the process of being removed. That's why people have bought there. We've been told that the main issue holding up this was the effluent from the properties on the east side of the lake. This has been successfully dealt with, and the Health Department have approved both the type of ATU that is being used and the whole wastewater process, as noted in the briefing documents that were made last week. The water from the small treatment plant at Freshwater Lakes estate is very clear and clean, and the runoff is used to provide water for the paddock where we're growing more trees. Effectively and efficiently using that water, it is not running off anywhere else that isn't already getting wastewater, such as from the Crooked Carrot. I feel that the Shire allowed building on Freshwater Lakes because they know all boxes have been ticked, and now there is no good reason not to allow residential building to go ahead. Mrs Patani mentioned the traffic management issue. This is more an issue due to the Crooked Carrot than Freshwater Lakes. The Freshwater Lakes demographic seems to be a mixture of retired, semi-retired, singles and couples, with the occasional family building on the estate. How would the Shire police that people are only staying 3 months within a whole year? If we have to move out, where are we to live? There's a housing shortage all over WA. Please consider these points and the fact that many people's lives are affected by this when making your decision and not delaying it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Any questions, councillors? I just remind councillors that Steve and Gil Butler also have a submission that has been forwarded to all councillors via email. We also had a deputation. Unfortunately, we have 4 that are unable to be here. One is from Graham Featherstone at Lakeside Drive, Rachel Romano, Lena Turter and Franklin Turter, all in agreement and with all the proponents here today regarding the removal of the short stay limits on freshwater lakes development and restricted use 16. So just to make you aware of those, councillors. Okay, item 9, announcements by presiding member or CEO without discussion is nil. Item 10, confirmation of minutes from the ordinary council meeting Tuesday 27th of June 2023. A recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday 27th of June 2023 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. I have a mover, Councillor Crispin, second Councillor Capagrego. I'll put the motion. Those for the motion? Those against? The motion is carried. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committees. We have the Audit Committee meeting on Tuesday 18th of July 2023. Recommendation that the minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on Tuesday 18th of July 2023 as printed be received. We have a mover, Councillor Beach, second Councillor Dickinson. I'll put the motion. Those for the motion? Those against? Nil. The motion is carried. Item 12, Officers' Reports. Recommendations contained in the Officers' Report, which were adopted by exception resolution with the exception of the following items. We have that with the exception of 12.1.1 to 12.1.2, 12.1.4, 12.1.6 to 12.1.8, 12.3.3 and 12.5.1 to 12.5.2, which are to be considered separately. The officer's recommendations for items 12.1.3, 12.1.5, 12.1.9, 12.3.1 to 12.3.2, 12.3.4 and 12.4.1 to 12.4.2 be adopted as the council resolution. We have a mover, Councillor Jackson, and seconder, Councillor Campbell. I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? The motion is carried.
Mr President, can I just point out Councillor Lovett is not voting on any of these, so if we could just ask that she be removed from the votes for.
Okay, item at 12.1. 12.1.1, request to waive application fee, Harvey Senior Citizens Centre. Move Councillor Beach, second Councillor Dickinson. Any discussion, councillors? Put the motion. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried. Item number 12.1.2, West Australian Local Government Association 2023 Annual General Meeting, voting delegates. We have Councillor Beach.
Mr President, I would like to nominate the Shire President and the Deputy Shire President as the delegates to that convention, if they're willing to accept.
We just need 2 proxies. Councillor Beach.
Sorry, I misread that.
That's all right, sir. Would you like to be a proxy, Councillor Beach?
I'll be a proxy for you then, sir.
Any other councillors that would like to be a proxy? Councillor Crispin? you're happy to move that, Councillor Beach.
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Second, Councillor Burgoyne.
Yes, really.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? It's nil. Motion is carried. Item number 12.1.4. Ordinary Council meeting September 2023. Officer recommendation. Move Councillor Dickinson, second Councillor Coleman. Right, any discussion, Councillor? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Nil. Motion is carried. Item number 12.1.6, Strategic Community Plan 2021 to 2031 minor review. Officer recommendation. Councillors, do you have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Dickinson, Councillor Crispin. Any discussions, councillors? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Nil. Motion is carried. 10-0, absolute majority. Item 12.1.7, Corporate Business Plan 2023 to 2027. We have the officer recommendation. The councillors. Have a mover. Councillor Dickinson, moving. Councillor Crispin, second. Any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Nil? That's all right. Motion is 10-0. Absolute majority. Okay, item 12.1.8, Executive Services New Policies. Okay, do we have a mover? A seconder? Move Councillor Dickinson, seconder. Councillor Crispin. Councillor Coleman, do you have a possible amendment?
Yes, Mr. President, and it's on the screen. It's probably easier to see.
Is there a second of the possible amendment?
Yeah.
Positive yes from the left? Yep. No?
It speaks for itself.
Yep, okay. Second, Councillor Beach. Councillor Coleman, you're pretty happy to...
Yeah, unless there's any questions.
Anyone got any questions to test Councillor Coleman's voice? No? Okay. So I'll put the amendment. Those for the amendment? Those against? It's nil. The amendment's carried. Substantive. You didn't think I was going to send the post. Okay, so we have the substantive motion. So I'll put the motion. Those for the motion? Those against? The motion is carried. Okay, 12.3.3, local planning scheme number 2, finalisation. We have a mover, Councillor Beach. Do we have a seconder? Happy to second that. Yeah, we're just going one at one. We'll do one first. Councillor Beach, amendments.
I've got a number of amendments, Mr. President. The first one is to do with accepting a late submission from Hatch Roberts in relation to 9005 Lakes Parade Binningham. And the reason for moving that is that the late submission is a further expression of support for the progression of this particular proposal.
Okay, do we have a... Technical issues at the front here today. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Campbell. Councillor Beach. Pretty well self-explanatory?
Pretty well, yes. Whether accepted, I'll be down.
Yep.
Thank you. I think it's worthy of being accepted, I guess, in summary.
Any questions, discussion, councillors? Okay, we'll put the amendment. Those for the amendment? Those against? Nil? Amendment's carried. Councillor Beach? Amendment 2?
Yes, I'm not sure what order they're coming up on the screen, but this first one I've got is Lot 401 Forest Highway. Is that the one I need to speak to now?
You're correct, sir.
Okay.
Did you want me to get a seconder for this amendment, councillors? Councillor Crispin? Councillor Beach?
Yes, this block of land that is in Rowlands and borders the Forest Highway on its western boundary. We've heard on a number of occasions now from Mr. Larry Guys, a respected town planner, and I believe he was the head of WAPC for 10 years, and he has requested on behalf of his client 4 minor modifications to Lot 401 Forest Highway. The first one is that the recreation public open space along the western boundary adjoining Forest Highway be reduced in width. There wasn't a great deal of comment about that when it was proposed. It makes a lot of sense that... am I supposed to speak to these right now or go through them?
You're just doing your one amendment?
Just one at a time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the first one. And I'll speak to it after I've moved them, okay? The second one is to the recreation public open space along the eastern boundary to be modified to allow for a road reserve. The third amendment is to recreation public open space along the northern boundary to be removed. And the fourth one is the small triangular portion, southwestern corner, be public open space. So that's the amendment, and I can speak to those if you wish.
Councillors, happy with those? Any clarification needed? Seconder wish to speak? No? All happy?
So the reasons for those, Mr. President, the first one is the reason for the additional modifications that Council determined that a strip of public open space between the gas pipeline easement and the habitable buildings is not required, and the balance of the pipeline setback can be accommodated within the proposed low density R5 lots. The second one, the reason for the additional modification is that Council determined that this portion of Lot 567, a former road reserve, will facilitate integration of the proposed public open space adjacent to Lot 401 with the existing public open space to the south, including linking with the proposed acoustic wall. And the final one, the reason for that modification is that Council determines that the portion of Lot 567 is more logically re-included as a road reserve to enable practical vehicle access while maintaining the public open space and drainage functions to the south.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Beach. Councillor Campbell. Question?
Yeah, through the CEO to staff, if I can. Just seeking clarification in regards to the eastern boundary and allowing for that road reserve. Staff indicated that they were waiting for additional information in regards to the impact that they may have on existing drainage and the vegetation. So can staff just offer us any further advice in regards to if we approve that? Or where they're at in regards to seeking that additional information?
Through you, Mr Chairman, no, the additional information that we had requested has not been received. And we would need to, depending on the advice that we receive back, we would need to have a very good look at the detailed design of that particular roadway. It is, as you possibly recall from the photos, tree lined with the potential opportunity for the road in the middle, where it is cleared. The driveways, services, everything on that western side could have the potential for those trees to be removed. So we would want to have a look at it at a detailed design stage and may even look at a much wider road reserve to protect some of those trees from urban services.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So just to write a reply on that, Mr Chair, is that we need to include this in this amendment so that the proponents then can come back, as Mr Hall said, with a detailed structured plan, and it is at that time whether or not it is then turned into the road reserve or what modification needs to do it. But if you don't have it in the local planning scheme right now, it will then have to go for a further amendment to bring it back in. Just makes sense to include it now and then deal with it when the structure plan comes in. And if it's suitable, it's suitable. If it's not, it needs to be modified.
We're all happy, councillors? Okay, I'll put the amendment. Those for the amendment? Those against? Nil? Carried 10-0. Amendment 3, Councillor Beach.
Yeah, thanks, Mr President. This relates to a small parcel of land, Lot 33 in 4th Street, Harvey, and that it's recommending or moving that the block of land be included as additional modification to rezone Lot 33, number 72, 4th Street, Harvey, from rural to urban development.
I'll grab a second. Is there a second?
Yep.
Yes, Councillor Capgregor. All yours.
Thank you. There's no doubt that this block of land will one day be used for residential development that will complement the developments on similar blocks further to the south on that particular road on 4th Street. If we were to push this through now and leave it as rural, it will mean the proponent sometime down the track will have to then apply for an amendment, taking up more valuable time. And the proponent would require to have this amendment done now so that he can go to the GBRS and progress concurrently a application to the GBRS alongside this particular planning scheme. So it will also give the indication to the WAPC that we do intend to further develop that land sometime in the future.
you got your screen, on your screen, Councillor Beach?
Yeah, what am I saying? I'm looking at.
So, portion of lot 566. Then attachment 5.
It's not what I've got here.
No. So what amendment would that lines up with yours?
Mine includes an additional modification to rezone lot 33, number 7243.
There we go. So that there, amendment 5 will now be amendment 3.
Yeah.
Fra, if
That's the one.
Yep. Okay, is there any questions, councillors? Queries regarding that? Councillor Capodrago, anything to add as seconder?
Not a great deal, just that if you look at the land to the west of that lot and look at the land to the south of that lot, they were at some stage rural properties and they were developed. And I think that common sense here says that, you know, the next portion of land is that block of land there, even though that land is at the moment zoned as rural. I think the potential is there for urban development in the future, and that I support the amendment that Councillor Beach put forward.
You're all happy, councillors? Okay, I'll put the amendment. Those for the amendment? Those against? Carried 10-0. Councillor Beach, amendment number 4.
4 or 3? This amendment, Mr Chair, relates to lot 335 Stanley Road, Wellesley, and it is to include an additional modification to include additional use for the lot 335 Stanley Road, Wellesley, as follows. There's it's a scheme amendment there, and it really is to put an additional use rather than a restrictive use over that particular parcel of land.
Is there a seconder for this amendment? Councillor Burgoyne.
Thank you. This lot is situated in Stanley Road at the southernmost end of Kemerton Industrial Buffer, and it's on the south side of Stanley Road between Forest Highway and the waste management plant. Given its isolated location, the site plays a very limited role in buffering the Kemerton industrial core, and the site's already occupied by established rural industries, transport, depot businesses and the like. There's been development approval, there's been granted for fuel, recharge and a convenience facility. Approval's been granted to subdivide the site, not the lot but the site, so that the existing and approved uses could be held on separate lots. The site's already been cleared of a significant amount of vegetation due to the existing use made of the land, and with further vegetation to be cleared if permitted for approved use. The site plays very little limited role, if any, in buffering Kemerton. Given the site's location and in particular its proximity to the waste management facility, there's scope to allow for some limited additional commercial development to complement the existing and approved uses on the site without compromising the intent of the Kemerton industrial buffer. So basically we're asking for the amendment to change from restricted use over the block to additional use, and it includes warehouse storage as well.
Councillor Burgoyne, anything to add?
Pretty much what he said.
Any questions or queries, councillors?
I'd like to speak against.
Yep. Speaker against. Councillor Jackson.
The Kemerton buffer is to restrict the impacts of a developed Kemerton industrial area from the population centres. The closest population of any number and growing number is Leschenott and the area adjacent to this site on the western side of the highway. So to me, we've had an ever-increasing intensity in the Stanley Road area, which is put forward by the proponents here to say it's already there, it's already happened, but we've not seen reinstatement of the bush. We've seen the usage of that site, and now they want to continue to enhance their yields from that, whether it be restricted use or adding use in this case. So to me, our scheme says intensification of the buffer is not something we should be looking for, because it's actually to protect our communities from the development of Kemerton, which I believe we will see further development given recent investments in there. So to me, every time we allow another use in this precinct, we're taking away the very population centre that needs to be buffered from that use. So I would like to see this as restricted and no further usage is added to what we already have created there in one by one, allowing extraction, removal of the vegetation, removal of the topography that has allowed light, noise, etc. To impact on the communities to the west already. So I don't agree with this.
Any other speaker? Question?
Based on the reason that's displayed, can we get a staff opinion, please?
Through Mr. Chair, sorry. I don't know if we could comment on the reason. I don't know if that's appropriate.
Any other speaker for? Speakers against? Councillor Beach.
Nothing further to add, Mr. Chair. My argument's there. Councillor Jackson's got an argument. Put it to the vote.
Okay. I'll put the amendment. Those for the amendment? Those against? 3 against. Carried 7-3. Councillor Beach, next amendment.
That's it.
Got one more?
No.
I think there's 2 more. Okay, I think we combined.
Yeah, they were all in one.
Cutting and pasting.
Yes, they were all as one
Yep.
for that particular item.
They have to go out separately. So unfortunately, I've been told by everyone, they've got to be separate.
I'll stick my name in there and someone else's name.
Okay, so which one we're going to? Amendment? That's been...
No, it hasn't.
No? Councillor Beach?
Clarification for you, Councillor Beach. There were 3 portions of POS that you wanted to be changed. You did read out your reasoning for all 3 of them. However, each particular parcel of POS needs to be dealt with as a separate resolution. So we did the first one and then skipped down through to Harvey. So we need to go back and actually address that road reserve and that triangular piece of POS as well.
Well, he's already argued, let's just move on.
Have we got a seconder for Councillor Coleman? There'd likely to be any discussion, councillors? Put the amendment. Those for the amendment? Those against? No, it's carried 10-0. Okay. Amendment 6, which is on the screen, councillors. So move Councillor Beach, second Councillor Dickinson. Would anyone like Councillor Beach to recap on this one specifically? No, all good. Any discussion? Okay. I'll put the amendment. Those for the amendment? Those against? 0. That's carried 10-0. That was the first one, I'm pretty sure. Okay. Good to go? Yeah. Okay. So officer recommendation 1 of 2. We have the substantive motion. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Yep, use the original mover and seconder, the item for the substantive. Okay. Is there anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 10-0. Officer recommendation 2 of 2. Have a mover and seconder. Mover and a seconder.
I have a question for the planner, please.
Yes.
Given recent events with the land clearing and development of the agricultural sites, and we saw that discord between residents and farming proponents, given if we allow this today, what course of action have we got to bring those parties together for mutual outcomes suitable for both? Or are we simply going to see continued conflict with the land uses?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, there's never ever an opportunity whereby adjoining landowners can't get together themselves. If that is something that's going to be facilitated by the Shire, it would never have been done previously before. And I don't know if out of this either party, depending on which way it went, would be satisfied. So I don't know if the decision would bring them any closer at this stage. I'm trying hard to answer your question, but trying hard to sort of say that that is a very difficult thing to try and achieve, given the history of development out there.
And thank you, I realise that, and I guess that's why we're all in conflict ourselves. So what I'm looking for perhaps is, given that if the agricultural use needs development approval for any change in current use, comes to mind the clearing, will we see that come to council each time, given that there may be an advertising period where local residents might find themselves aggrieved, and will that allow us to mediate in some way?
Through Mr. Chairman, applications for further intensification or change of land use on any of the horticultural lots at that area may or may not trigger a development application, depends on what it is. So, and it wouldn't necessarily be an automatic right for advertising. So yeah, we would need to assess it on its merits and not go down a planning approval process just because I think it's the right way. It's an opportunity for everyone to have their say. We can't actually go beyond what our planning framework allows us to do in regard to the application process. So yeah, there may or may be opportunities in the future, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay, so to clarify that, agricultural industry can continue until it gets to a point where they may need to seek a development application. So their practice can continue until such time that there may be conflict.
Through Mr. Chairman, they have valid development approvals which they can implement and actually adhere to now. If they wish to change or expand those, then they may need to go through the development approval process. And their day-to-day activities is governed by legislation over and above just planning as well, in terms of noise and health requirements. So there is a framework in place that needs to be adhered to, that seeks clearly to mitigate any off-site impacts.
Okay. Any other questions or queries, councillors? Do we have an officer recommendation 2 of 2? Do we have a mover? Councillor Campbell move. Councillor Dickinson second. Councillor Campbell? Anything to add? Happy?
Anything to add? Councillors and people in the gallery, this is not an easy decision, and I'd firstly like to acknowledge the concerns that have been raised by both parties, the Patanis and the residents, and acknowledge the rather large number of submissions that we've received from the residents. I've learned a lot about this development over the last couple of weeks, and the location of this development and the short-term stay restriction has been a legacy that council has been dealt with. We've been dealt with the cards, and I see this as an opportunity to hopefully resolve that disparity. My understanding was this estate was a lifestyle concept that unfortunately hasn't come to fruition, and I believe one of the main reasons for this was the short-term stay restriction. And I believe that to continue with the status quo is not an option for council, and now we've got an opportunity to resolve this disparity by changing the zoning. Should the short-term stay restriction be retained, then there is still the potential for the dwellings to be 100% occupied all year round. Therefore, allowing for the permanent occupancy will not alter the potential for this, for the residences to be occupied for 100% of the year. The possible impacts on residents via the agricultural activities, as presented in the number of deputations we've heard from the Patanis, can be dealt with via buffers and conditions. And I also believe that the residents need to take some proactive measures to reduce the conflict between the residences and the agricultural activities. Freshwater estate is not going to go away. Changing the zoning has no effect or impact on the agricultural activities as they are. However, it remains, the residents remain as a sensitive land use. So regardless whether it's short stay or permanent occupation, the agricultural practices will still need to be managed through regulations and conditions, and they will remain the same regardless of whether it's short-term or permanent. It's not an easy decision, but I believe it's a way forward to resolve this long-standing issue, and therefore I support the changes in the LPS 2.
Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the people that are in the gallery today for coming along, and I would like to thank all of the deputations. I totally agree with Councillor Campbell that this is not an easy decision. It has been very problematic in the past. We are trying to resolve those issues, and I think that the best way going forward is to support this motion. I know the area, having formerly farmed in the vicinity prior to this development, so I am familiar with the locality, and I take everything on board that everybody has said in their deputations today. It's not an easy decision to make, but I agree with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Is there a speaker against? Other speakers for? Councillor Beach.
Yes, without going over what the mover and seconder have said, except to say that yes, it's probably one of the hardest decisions we've had to make as a council for a long time. I lost the weekend arguing on paper to support and then not support, and I am still probably reluctantly supporting this motion. We have prime agricultural land producing fine produce that we all need, and then we have people that are looking for a lifestyle. I think due diligence would have told you that if you're moving into an area where there's farming operations going on, there will be impacts upon your lifestyle, whether it's cattle making a noise, whether it's tractors making a noise, whether it's harvesting making a noise. That is part and parcel of being in that particular area, and I am disappointed that the Patains have been subject to complaints from people that live in that particular area, but we have been told it didn't stop some of the residents in that area from removing the chewet. Now, how true that accusation is, I don't know, but it will be investigated. So we are making this particularly hard decision with a great deal of reservation, and I hope that all parties can get along in the future, maintain the farming activities on one side and maintain a rural lifestyle, and I stress a rural lifestyle on the other side.
Any speaker against? Any others for? Councillor Campbell, Councillor Capriotto, no?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too have lost a bit of sleep over this decision, and I'd like to think that both parties could live alongside each other. And by that I mean we've got a primary industry that we have to support. I mean, the whole country is living off primary industries. So who am I to stop a farmer from doing their job? And I support the Patanis in their endeavours to do their job, but I also would like to think that they would put everything in place that's obliged of them to contain their industry and do some kind of separation. I also don't think I'm in a position where I would be forcibly making people make decisions about where they want to live and altering that. So I'm a bit of a fence sitter at the moment, but at the moment I'm thinking that I will go with the amendment as is, but I strongly would state right now that the first complaint that I had, I would not be looking at that complaint in the future, because we need to be able to work and live alongside each other. And people that bought land that's close to agricultural, you've seen what goes on in agriculture. The decision was made, that land was always there. It may not have been used as horticulture at the time, but it was in agricultural land. And those things change with what the demand is out there in regards to agriculture. So I support what all the other councillors are saying, and I support the amendment, and I ideally hope that what we do here today is going to put this thing to bed, and that both parties can work and live along with each other. Thank you.
Speaker against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Campbell?
Oh, nothing much further to say than what the other councillors have said, other than please rest assured that it's not an easy decision to make this, but hopefully it will give us a pathway pathway forward for both parties. So thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Those for the motion? Those against? Motion's carried 10-0.
Mr. President, can I just ask the planner to clarify what he mentioned before about the process now? This is not a final decision today in a sense of the process of going to WPC or of advertising it?
Through Mr Chairman, so no, this is a recommendation of Council in regard to the submissions received during the advertising of the scheme, and the final decision as to what gets included remains with the West Australian Planning Commission.
Item number 12.5.1, Draft Sport and Recreation Plan. We have an officer's recommendation. Councillor Dickinson moving. We have a second, Councillor Campbell. Any questions, any queries, councillors? Put the motion. Those for the motion? Those against? Carried 9-0. Item number 12.5.2, Community and Lifestyle Policies Review 2023. Officer recommendation.
Question.
Councillor Chess.
Just a question, please, to the Honours and Awards policy pointed out at the agenda briefing that there was an anomaly between the recipients being, or the nominees being, kept embargoed, and then on the other page it was they were going to be invited and acknowledged. It was going to get cleaned up. I'd just like to know whether that has been achieved.
And through the chair, thank you, Councillor. Those amendments have been made.
Thank you very much.
Question, thank you, Mr. President. The community funding policy, has that been established yet? The new community funding policy?
Councillor Coleman, I believe that there will be an item come to Council at a future Council meeting. I'm unsure whether that will be August or September, but I know that that will be workshop with Council prior.
Question. So can we therefore amalgamate with a policy that doesn't exist?
I can provide a response through the chair. So the recommendation for council is to revoke those policies at this stage. But yeah, perhaps in revoking them now, there isn't a policy in place until the new one's put up next month.
Okay. Have a recommendation. Have a mover. Councillor Campbell, seconder. Councillor Crispin. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillor? Okay, I'll put the recommendation. Those for the recommendation? Those against? Carried 10-0. Item 13. Elected members' motion to which previous notice has been given is nil. Notice of motion for the following meeting is nil. Questions by members of which due notice has been given is nil. Reports of members, a couple there and the rest in the big tin can. Item 17, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of meeting is nil. Item 18, matters behind closed doors. We have Councillor Burgoyne moving. Second, Councillor Dickinson. I'll put the motion, those for the motion. Those against? 0. It's carried 9-0. Okay, welcome back from the kind closed doors. Item 19, closure of the meeting. There being no further business to discuss, I'll declare the meeting closed at 5:36 and thank everyone for their attendance and enjoy the